All right, g'day everyone and welcome to Rolling Conversations this Tuesday, and it's our rugby special. We've been looking forward to this one, and we've got a couple of good likely men online with us for today's session. So please welcome Curtis Palmer, a coach of the GIO New South Wales Gladiators and international wheelchair rugby player, as well as international rugby player Rob Horn and director of the Cauliflower Club. Welcome, lads.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Mick.
Great to have you online with us, and we say good day to everyone watching online. Please send through your questions and comments, and we'll get them up on screen, and we'll have a chat over the next half an hour. Now, before we start, I just need to put some context into where you both are as a method of, not getting away from the kids. Let's not use it that way. Maybe just describe, because Rob, we've got you at work this afternoon. Yes,
that's right. Yep, we've started back on a bit of a rotating schedule, so a couple of days back in the office. So I'm in here, escaping the working from home. And
whereas on the other hand,
you'll be pleased to know where Curtis is.
Curtis, you're in amongst it all at home, and you've snuck in somewhere, have you?
Yeah, look, I'm in the walk-in wardrobe. There's not a whole lot of room to move in here, but the kids have just got home from childcare, and it's pretty chaotic out there. So
they're kicking off.
Yeah, I'm hiding away.
All right, mate. Well, we'll keep
I've
it
got
down
dinner
for
ready,
you, so
though. Dinner's ready.
You don't get discovered.
Yeah.
Nice. Guys, we want to talk about your early days in sport, and I might start, Curtis, with you, if I may, because as I mentioned at the start, you're one of those rare people who've played at the elite level in both New Zealand and Australia in wheelchair rugby. But as a young bloke, tell us what young Curtis was like. Whereabouts did you grow up?
Oh, geez, it's a bit of a journey. So we moved to Australia when I was 10 years old from New Zealand. We moved out to Orange, and I was a mad rugby player, rugby fan growing up through the ages of 5 through to 10. But when we moved out to Orange, there was no rugby out there for people, my age. So I started playing rugby league at the under 11s level, and that was the beginning of the story, really. Once I started playing, I became addicted, mate, and it really consumed me. It became my life, and I had a wonderful journey playing league as a young fella.
And you did. I don't want to bring it up because obviously the Eels rolled Manly on the weekend. I just want to make that point. But putting that to one side, you did play for Manly. I think you were saying before we came on air, and Harold Matthews.
Yeah, 1991, I moved to Manly. We were kind of thinking that maybe we would head back to New Zealand, but because my dad had some work in Sydney, we thought, we'd try there. And I ended up representing Manly at the Harold Matthews level, which is the under 15s. In 1992, and the champion team that Manly are will only look back on the little blip that we had last week and absolutely demolished the Broncos on the weekend. So watch out for that one.
Geez, you better.
Yeah. Certainly will. Hey, Rob, tell us about early days for you. You're a Sydney man originally, and in fact, you got a bit of league in your background as well.
Sure. So I grew up in Lugano in southern Sydney, and I played rugby and league at the same time. I suppose it was rugby on Saturday and league on Sundays, and that was my weekends. I suppose being ferried to and from different games and loving it. And I think in the end we couldn't really have a rugby team without a league team, or a league team without a rugby team, because you kind of just bring blokes across. So. But it was great. It was great to I suppose, round out your game in both. And I love playing both. It was, offered different things. I suppose for me, I probably viewed myself as a bit of a rugby player playing league opposed to the other way around, and felt maybe I was, I was possibly more suited to rugby, and sort of went down that path.
And what age did you have to make a decision between those two? Was that something that you sort of played both of them well into your teens, or when did you make that call?
Yeah, I think under 16s, it's when 16-year-old boys are pretty much men. So playing back-to-back games at that age, probably that came to a bit of a head, whereas I can't keep doing this, So I played Harold Matts for St George, and then New South Wales under 16s in rugby, and after that, kind of decided I'll focus on rugby.
Curtis, interested to hear about your journey then. You grew up playing league and rugby, as you said, and then obviously you become a great wheelchair rugby player. What was your journey to get involved in wheelchair rugby?
Yeah, 1992 was a really good year for me playing rugby league. I went to a rugby league mad school at St Paul's at Manly, and that provided me with some access to some amazing peers, as well as some great coaching. So that year I played for Manly, for Harold Matthews, and then I played for the New South Wales Combined Catholic Colleges, and had some really, really good success. Enough success for me to think that rugby league was a viable option, not just a pipe dream for me to to build my life around. You can't probably tell, but I'm actually a redhead, mate, and I definitely had the personality that redheads are labelled with, and I was never the biggest guy in the field, but I always prided myself on being quite aggressive and just left nothing out there. And it was this kind of reckless, I suppose, attitude that got me into a bit of trouble one day. It was August the 29th, 1992, playing in a grand final down on Brookvale Oval against the Chroma Kingfishers. And the other guys on the team, the Kingfishers, they had a team full of Manly reps, and I played for the Harbord Devils. We also were packed with representatives. We were undefeated. So there were just fireworks that whole game. It was strange to think that under 15-year-olds could play with such ferocity and commitment. And we were about 10 metres out from the try line. I grabbed the ball from dummy half, and coming towards me were some pretty big blokes, actually. Max Krilich's son was one of them. And with that kind of reckless, abandoned attitude that I had, I decided to run even harder at those guys. And at the last second, I ducked my head, trying to make myself nice and small and get in between the two of them. I misjudged it, and I slammed my head right into one of the guys' sides. And unbeknownst to me at the time, I'd broken my neck at the cervical 6 and 7 level, and that pretty much flattened me onto the ground. And that's where my wheelchair journey started from there. And wheelchair sports came into my life fairly quickly after that. In rehab, I got back into sport straight away, and wheelchair sports back in those days was a hugely community-based kind of organisation. And mate, it wasn't until after I'd tried so many other sports that I actually found wheelchair rugby. And once I kind of found rugby, I was like, well, can't play rugby league anymore, but I sure as hell can be, or try to be, the best wheelchair rugby player that I can be. And yeah, it's been great, mate, so far.
As I said at the start, amazing. You went on to play, obviously, for New Zealand and Australia. And it prompted us, didn't it, but just before we came on air, to figure out whether anyone had done the same in rugby union, because we couldn't think of anyone who'd played for both the All Blacks and the Wallabies. Turns out our research assistant suggests there's about 5 or 6 blokes that have done that. But anyone watching at home might, without using Google, put a comment up if you know any of the names of the blokes that have played for both the All Blacks and the Wallabies. Rob, picking up on that then, once you're a young man, I mean, I think you were playing representative footy at sort of 18, 19, were you? And then obviously you go on to the Waratahs. What was your journey to the Waratahs like?
Sure. I suppose, Curtis, every team's not a team without a redhead, so I adhere to that. I always love a redhead in the side next to me. I know I can count on him in the trenches. So, for mine, my journey happened quite quickly. I played through the combined high school CHS system, and then on to New South Wales schools and the Aussie Schoolboys programs, and from there went into the Waratahs Academy. Played in a couple trial games and a couple games into that Super Rugby season. Ben Jacobs went down with an ACL. He was the 13 at the time at the Waratahs, and Ewan McKenzie was the coach at that time, and I suppose he could have picked. He had a couple of options he could have gone down, more experience, but he gave me an opportunity, and I like to think I took it. And so from then on, I started my career at New South Wales, and was very fortunate to have spent my entire Australian rugby playing career at one club, the team that I supported and I loved. So to be able to have played 10 years for New South Wales, I'm very proud of achieving that, and also obviously playing for Australia as well. But yeah, it happened quite quickly, and but at that age, you're absolutely fearless. You're not. You follow your feet and you do what you do, and it's maybe a couple of seasons in where you start to overthink it a bit, and then you cause yourself some, I suppose, maybe a plateau in performance. So, and then again, and the arc, you become comfortable. You understand your abilities. You understand the game a bit more, and then you go from there. So. Yeah, I guess that was my entry into professional sport.
And Curtis spoke about being fiery. Were you fiery, Rob, as well, mate? Have you ever got 10 in the bin, or what's your rap sheet look like?
Yeah, I got quite familiar with the judiciary system, and yeah, so I had a few weeks in rugby jail. Rugby jail isn't real jail, so it's okay.
Okay, good. Yeah, I mean, it's a safe place if you're sharing, but no, okay, good. So you guys are both finished playing now. I'm interested in what you miss about that game. You've played at the highest level, you've toured, travelled with teams, all the rest of it. What is it that, and Curtis, I might start with you if I may, what is it that you perhaps miss about the game now that you're no longer playing?
Oh, mate, there's those years that you're playing, you don't actually take for granted, how amazing the experiences are. And so that's probably one regret that I do have, is it's just been able to smell the roses at that time, because it goes so fast. And I look back on it now, and it's actually hard to remember a lot about a lot of the things that I did. 4 Paralympic Games, and numerous World Championships, and just countless and endless travel and tournaments and stuff like that. They all kind of blur into one. So what I miss about the training side of things is, I used to be able to do session upon session and feel great. Now it's just so hard to bounce back. I'm 43 now, and I just don't feel anywhere near as good as what I did when I was playing. And when you're playing, you're surrounded by other people that are really, striving to be the best, and you've got all these inbuilt goals that, you wake up in the morning and you know what you're kind of working towards. And now that I'm retired, everything is just up to me. I'm kind of left to my own devices, and it's kind of like leaving the military. When you get out of that environment and you're left to your own devices, it can come crumbling and crashing down upon someone, which I did struggle with for quite some time. It's recreating the identity that I created while I was playing. So yeah, look, I don't necessarily miss it now, but it certainly was some good times.
Like me, I thought you were actually going to say your hair, but it appears there were other aspects to the game.
I actually always look this handsome, so I don't actually miss hair.
Sure. Hey, yeah, that's interesting. And we talk about, and part of having you on, Rob, was to talk about some parallels between wheelchair rugby and rugby. But Curtis spoke about travelling and being around, the camaraderie of being around a team and teammates and all the rest of it. You sustained an injury, of course, as we know, that meant that you couldn't play anymore as well. Tell us perhaps a bit about that, but more so about what you might miss about your playing days.
Sure. Yeah, so I, about 2 years ago now, it's kind of flown, but it's also gone very slow. It feels like it's quite a while ago. But yeah, so I was playing in England for Northampton in my first year up there in the Midlands, and I loved it. I loved the club. I identified with the club. It was a working class town, and they really took me on. And yeah, my family were out and about in the community, and I suppose going from a quite a professional environment in Super Rugby and New South Wales, to go into essentially what I found the English Premiership to be like was, it was like club rugby just with resources.
Right.
So it was old school, like it was like genuinely very old school, yet you had a great gym.
Right.
And because it was they're all boutique stadiums like the EPL type model, where you've got between 12,500 and 15,000 seat stadiums, they're full every week.
Wow.
And legitimately, it's you're that town's team, you know, and they love it. They absolutely are just so passionate, and that was something where, coming from, I suppose, a rugby experience prior to that, was when times were good, times were great, playing for the Waratahs. But playing in Sydney too, with that, you either have to be winning or and if you're not, then that's an issue. So
Yeah.
I suppose coming from that environment, where I've come from a place where when times are good, times are great. When they're not, they're really not. To a place where just a different mentality towards the game. It really refreshed me in a sense that I didn't even know I needed that refreshment until I got there. And it's so I love my time there. And I mean, poetically, I suppose, I was actually I'd been afforded the opportunity to captain the club that day where I sustained my injury, in what is their biggest rivalry too, being up the road at Leicester. So Northampton and Leicester are traditional rivals, and Northampton fans kind of say, as long as you beat Leicester, everything else doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I was under no illusions about the enormity of going up to Welford Road, and we'd already beaten them. My debut for Saints was against the Tigers at home. Then we went up the road to try and do the double, which the club hadn't done, beaten Leicester home and away since they won the premiership in 2014. So I was pretty motivated to lead the boys out there and do well. And I suppose how my injury occurred was off the kickoff. I looked away, and I suppose I'll talk you through exactly what happened. I looked away, and then as I look back, I kind of mistimed how we were kicking off. So I just missed the hop a bit. So I had to chase the kickoff a bit harder. And then I kind of saw it come down, and I had a decision to make. I had the decision where, look, I can probably go for the textbook safe tackle around the legs here. I know I'm probably not in great position, but I made the decision at that split moment to go, no, I'm going to try and make a dominant shot here, and to try and set the tone for my team in what is a very hostile environment. I wanted to lead by example and to really set a tone. Unfortunately, the bloke I hit was the biggest bloke on the field. His pointy bit got my soft bit in my neck, and so that completely exploded my brachial plexus. So from C5 to T1, all the nerves that operate my right limb completely detached. And so the best way it's been described, my injury, is that I haven't just pulled the plug out of the wall, I've pulled the whole wall socket out of the wall. And so that's left me with complete limb paralysis. And so I retired on the field at that exact moment. So I suppose now what I miss, I don't sit there and go watching games and go, oh, geez, I wish I could be out there, because I know I can't. I don't ride it, but what I do miss is after the game, after you've had that shared experience where you poured everything out for 80 minutes with your mates next to you who have done exactly the same thing. And then whether you win or lose, just that feeling of complete exhaustion yet satisfaction, because you've given everything. and just sharing that bond which is created through that shared experience of all doing the same thing for the same cause. I suppose I miss that. That's hard to recreate.
Yeah, indeed. No, thanks for sharing, mate. That and I saw you nodding, Curtis. So it sounds to me like that idea of well, certainly trying to put a big hit on. You nodded pretty well at that point. It sounds like you might have done a bit of that in your wheelchair rugby days as well. But this idea of shared experience as well post sport, and in fact, Claire asked us a question there. What would you suggest other athletes do to reset their lives when they stop their sport? Curtis, starting with you, have you got any ideas on that?
Yeah, look, it's not something that happens straight away, that's for sure. You definitely need to try on a few hats and see which one fits before you decide that, okay, this is what I'm going to be doing now. That's definitely what I did. And getting help was probably the main thing. And with sports psychologists and careers advisors and things like that, but also just coming up with stuff myself and trying different things. And just taking the pressure off. You just got to be kind to yourself. You've just got to have a plan in place before you actually know that you're going to retire, like a plan B. That always helps. But even then, the feeling that you get when you're sitting on the couch when everyone else is training and you're sitting there going, well, I've got no one to play with because everyone's either at work or they're training. That's a harsh reality. We were both at a very elite level of sport, and to come down from that, mate, it's a time thing, but you also need to put in the work to make things happen, because just by sitting there is nothing's going to happen. So you've got to be proactive about it.
Curtis, mate, on that, I resonate with the be kind to yourself, because the thing is, you don't elevate to the position of to be the pinnacle of any industry without being hard on yourself, without being somewhat of your harshest own critic, and so I suppose I'll put it to you, like, because I'm still very much in the midst of I'm only 2 years post my injury, so working through, I suppose, a new normal. So that being kind to yourself, like that's massive, I think, because as elite athletes, you're not inherently you're not big, because the coach isn't going to be nice to you, and that pushes your performance.
Yeah, I mean, it's a cornerstone really of my development. Once I started learning that not to be so harsh on myself, that's when I started getting results, because that negative loop that you create inside your head, that wasn't motivating to me, and I became really impatient and developed really depressive behaviors. And it wasn't until I started seeing a psychologist and doing a couple of different courses that helped me to understand how my brain is actually working, and then for someone to put my position or my situation into perspective, someone from the outside looking in and saying to me that what you're thinking is not actually what's happening right now. You're creating this kind of doom and gloom atmosphere inside your head. And once you can start capturing those thoughts and redefining yourself as a person after you've retired, then you start to move forward.
It's a good question, Rob. And Sarah Stewart, who Curtis, and Rob is on our board of Wheelchair Sports, and a multi-Paralympian wheelchair basketballer and a real pioneer in women's sport, says congrats to you both on awesome careers. Curtis, how have you found the transition from athlete to coach? And I'll ask you, Curtis, but then also, Rob, you did a bit of coaching with the Sevens too, so I might go to you after that too.
Sure.
Yeah, look.
I mean, what sort of coach are you? You any good?
Myself?
Yeah.
I'd like to be. I'm definitely not one of those coaches that like to control the environment. I'm definitely like to sit back and nurture people through their journeys. I like to empower people to make their own decisions and just pipe in when I see the need. The transition has been it's been interesting. Like I don't think I'm a natural coach because when I played. I was a total instinct player. Like I just didn't work to plans. And so for me to come into this environment where a lot of the planning and all that sort of stuff is quite regimented and people like to know where they're going and stuff like that is that's probably the hardest thing I've had to deal with. But it's also forced me to look back and really I guess assess the strengths of people and really nurturing those kinds of things rather than telling them what to do, making suggestions and just trying to get the best out of people that way.
Interesting. Rob, I wonder, asking you the same question, you as I say, you had a go at coaching, but also the second question is, would you have wanted to coach yourself? Like, how would you have responded?
Geez, I think just one of me is enough. No, so I did a little bit of work with the men's Aussie Sevens team. I was asked by head coach Tim Walsh to come along to Dubai about 18 months ago, just to what at the time they were trying to get some former Wallabies that also played sevens in their career to come along, and because I suppose the dynamic of the sevens program in Australia is that it's a pretty young group, and so to get guys sharing their experiences, that's how I first started getting involved, and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed, I suppose, giving some insights. Or I played one tournament for Australia in sevens, and I didn't have the engine for it. It wasn't for me. But so I was no sevens wizard, but what I did know was I knew how to get the most out of myself. I knew how to, I suppose, just to wring the towel of every drop that I had, and if I could impart any of that onto those guys, I did. And I suppose my approach was if they wanted it, I was there. If they didn't, that's cool as well. That's fine. So after that initial, I suppose, involvement, there was pretty good feedback, mutual feedback, that maybe we could spend a bit more time, and in the lead up to Tokyo Olympics, and so I was involved with the boys. They did an incredible job to qualify in Oceania. They in the end beat, so they had to beat Samoa to qualify. They beat Samoa, then they beat Fiji in Fiji, which was pretty special for a sevens team. So that was an unreal experience to be a part of, to be honest, from the other side, the non-playing side. But that's genuinely just a great rugby memory of mine now. But then I guess post that, got to a point for me that I'd spent 10 years traveling the world, and it got to a point I wasn't playing anymore. So I can't be traveling, every week. And it was at that point where I said, I'm going to need to step away. And so now I'm no longer involved directly, but I keep tabs of those boys.
Yeah, of course. We got a lovely message there from Jess earlier saying, thanks very much for being so open about your story. And she was saying that you'll help lots of people as a result of being so open. And I echo those remarks. We've only got a couple of minutes left. I just wanted to ask you quickly before we do go, you're both dads, and I'm just interested in how becoming a dad changed you. What sort of dad are you? I'll stay with you, Rob, for a second. We'll finish, Curtis, with you. But Rob, you're a father of two.
Yeah, I've got a 4.5-year-old girl and almost 3-year-old boy. So handful. It's it's awesome. I mean, when my injury happened, they were quite young, but that was, I suppose, my biggest thing was that I didn't care if I didn't play the game again, as long as I could pick my kids up, and that was a pretty confronting time. But you know what, I can still pick my kids up. It's just different. Yeah, so it's the best. You know, what can you say?
Yeah. Well, there aren't any real words for it, are there? As a father myself, but Curtis as well. You've got how many kids have you got, and are any of them as fiery as you?
Yeah, I've got a 4-year-old. I've got 2 boys, 4-year-old and a 18 months old. And well, yeah, it's pretty intense at sometimes, you know, especially around about this time when it's you know, they're home from childcare and we're getting dinner ready and it's meltdown city, man. I think you know, as entertaining as it is having 2 boys, mate, being a dad is, I reckon it's actually harder than being an elite athlete. It's there's a lot going on, and I think I'm learning more about life from them than I'm ever, you know, going to teach them. So it's a great experience.
Yeah, I agree with that. They are our greatest teachers. Guys, we've run out of time. We could yarn all night, but I wanted to say thank you. Thank you, Rob. You're, of course, I mentioned, a director of the Cauliflower Club, who are a great partner to the wheelchair rugby program at Wheelchair Sports New South Wales. And to Alison Nolan and the whole board, through you, we say thank you for your support. And
Awesome.
we'd love to see you at a game sometime and bring the board along and, you know, just really grow that relationship. So thank you for being with us tonight on our rugby special.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
And to Curtis, of course, you're a much loved member of our community, and a hell of a fella. So go the Eels, and thanks for being on Rolling Conversations with us as well.
See you guys. Great to speak to you.
Cheers guys. Thanks very much. Good night.
Thank you.